Welcome to Loans Elevated, the podcast that brings you the latest industry news, expert interviews, and insightful discussions that will help you stay ahead in this dynamic market. I'm your host, Broch Lassig, and I've spent years in the trenches of the mortgage industry, helping individuals and businesses navigate the complex landscape of real estate financing.
I'm your co-host, Heidenreich, and together we'll cover a wide range of topics, from business strategies that skyrocket your success to mindset and motivation that fuel your growth.
Now the Fed. Go ahead. So this is one that TJ was kind of alluding to, and this one's really, really concerning. So the Fed's rate hikes, all these rate hikes getting us up to like the 5.5% Fed funds rate that we're at today, we weren't even really feeling them until fourth quarter of 2023. So we're talking like 5 months ago, we just barely started to feel the effects, economically speaking, of the Fed rate hikes. And it just keeps getting worse. Q1 of this year gets much worse. Q2, Q3 even gets a little bit worse. So we don't even feel the full effects of what the Fed has done over the past couple of years. We don't even feel the full effects until Q3 of this year. So we're like 6 months from feeling the gut punch that the Fed gave to the economy. Haven't even felt it yet. So all of these cracks are forming. Things are becoming obvious now. And we've got 6, 7, 8 months until that actually materializes with significance. And then look at our way out. I mean, we don't even hit the feeling we have today again until like Q4 of 2025. So like this is going to be a long-lasting thing. Again, kind of like leading to signs of recession, fear.
And that's why we're getting nervous about headlines, because if headlines keep coming out that employment's doing really good and stuff like that, or inflation's on the rise, then if the vote then goes to raising the rates, which will not happen right now, but if it were to happen, we start feeling the effects.
Or forget it, if they keep rates higher for longer, which we've all heard a ton of that. If they keep rates higher for longer, it's like, so think about this, the higher for longer thing, with the Fed keeping rates high right now, even though inflation has come down, that's a problem. Because inflation is now down, like, so if you look at, there's a website called Trueflation, that is like less than 2%. If you looked at what they're trying to demonstrate what the actual inflation rate is if you looked at data today. Because the government's data, which is what everyone relies on, is a little bit of an antiquated process of how they create the data. And there's obviously tech and data. I mean, that's like the evolution of our world, you know, that there's access to a lot more information. Trueflation is less than 2%. But let's just talk about the government's data. It's at about 3%. Well, 3% with a Fed funds rate of 5.25%, 5.5% is 2.5% higher than the inflation rate. Well, they started hiking this and inflation was at like 7. It was higher than the Fed funds rate. So it was kind of restrictive, but it was still higher. They were trying to drive that down. Now it's tremendously lower, yet they haven't changed the Fed funds rate. So it's like 100% more restrictive, double the restriction on the economy, just because we've seen inflation come down and they haven't changed their stance on borrowing rates, which is forcing everybody to pull back. Does that make sense? So it's worse now. But then TJ mentioned, like, there's some weirdos in the Fed that are saying, hey, we need to keep hiking. Anything like that, or even if they just keep them too high for too long, it's gonna make these get even worse, and it's going to lengthen how bad they get every month or every time they go without dropping rates. So every 3 months, the Fed, they vote on where they think the Fed funds rate should be. And that's what this is. So each one of these dots represents a Fed president casting their vote. It's an anonymous vote, but they're saying, hey, I think, you know, by 2024, we're going to see the Fed funds rate here. So you had an outlier really low, thinking it's going to be under 4. You had outliers really high, thinking it's going to stay where it is now. And then you had the middle. The significance of this report is showing in just 1 quarter, the Fed is like, they are not really financial people. So like there's one of the most bullish people in the Fed is an attorney who has no experience in economics. That's one of the most bullish ones that's saying, hey, we might want to hike more. She doesn't understand economics. Like there's way more smarter economic people in the world, which we learn from every single day. But their votes from September to December, so the two right next to each other, they thought, hey, we need to keep rates or they recognize, based on the data that they're seeing, because they're looking in the rearview mirror now, and data's starting to move really fast. Things are getting worse faster right now in the economy. They changed their vote, and the Fed funds expectation went down 0.5 point in 24, 1/3 point in 25, and then became unchanged in 26. But the significance is the Fed is starting to recognize that they need to make more significant changes faster, because they were thinking they could keep rates higher for longer, and now they're recognizing that. So the fear, based on our last one, is does the Fed put themselves in a position they have to drop rates too significantly to save the economy? And that's what creates that boom bust.
And that's why rates dropped in December through January. We saw rates come down almost a full percent. Now, which is crazy, because that also, once Fed funds rates actually do come down, we could not see as big of a reaction than what we were already seeing, because before the Fed meetings before, they're already projecting rates to come down.
So the Fed's changing their mind. It will influence the market, and as the data keeps moving faster and faster, they could change their mind faster and faster and see rates come down more than economists are projecting.
Okay, so who knows what QE or QT is, quantitative easing or quantitative tightening? This is the purchasing of mortgage-backed securities. You can see in COVID, the government had to purchase mortgage-backed securities at extreme rates to keep the economy afloat. And then as soon as when we started seeing rates get worse, which is August 22, that's when we started selling off. So that's what easing and tightening is. Cover the balance sheet and GDP.
Yep, and that's a component of it. So the Fed's quantitative easing is the Fed dropping their Fed funds rate.
Their holdings.
Well, no, and their Fed funds rate.
Gotcha.
There's two pieces. This is showing the holdings, the purchases of securities, treasury bonds and mortgage bonds. But the other component of that is raising and lowering rates. So if they drop rates, it's called quantitative easing. If they hike rates, it's called quantitative tightening. They're just tightening on economic conditions or loosening economic conditions to help kind of control and temper the economy. Another part of that is what TJ's saying here, which is how much they purchase in treasury bonds or mortgage bonds, which is a significant thing. The Fed holds a lot of them. So what this is showing, and what we're focusing on here as it relates to QE and QT, is we're showing the balance. So you've got total securities held on the balance sheet by the Fed. So this is the Fed's balance sheet of mortgage bonds and treasury bonds. And then you have GDP, and then you have a percentage. What percentage of their holdings of GDP was it? So 2014 to 2018, they held 22.4% of GDP on their balance sheet in these holdings. You notice it got, because of COVID, for them to ramp up the economy. They did so much. We had all this spending, all the COVID, like the forbearance and the checks that everybody got, all those things. Some of that is part of it. This is another piece. They went and bought tons and tons of mortgage-backed securities, and they just printed US dollars to buy this stuff. So there wasn't actual demand. The Fed created demand, which is why we saw mortgage rates at 2.5%. Very unnatural. It shouldn't have happened, but it's because they did all of this purchasing. Now we're seeing things get worse. So you notice it got as high as 33% of GDP, their holdings. Obviously a little bit out of whack, because over the past, nearly 8 to 10 years prior, 21 to 22%. So now they're selling off here, which happened in 2022, and you start seeing it, from April 22 to January of 24, it went from 33 to 25.6. So they made significant progress. The expectation, based on the published schedule of sales of these securities from the Fed, the expectation is it drops to 25.2, 24.9, 24.5, and then this red box is demonstrating when do we get close to maybe a comfortable range for the Fed, where it's an appropriate measure of their holdings compared to the GDP, the size of our economy. And it seems like sometime in Q4, maybe late Q3 this year, that will happen. That's probably why we're seeing many economists project for rates to not fall until way later this year, is because of this little piece. And this is really, really important, because the Fed, so they artificially created demand for mortgage-backed securities, and if people buy mortgage-backed securities, the rates go down. If people sell mortgage-backed securities, the rates go up. So this is another issue for us on top of the inflation, on top of the Fed funds rate. The other issue is they are artificially creating supply in a market that's already pulling back. The demand is already pulling back because, for example, I talked about the bank failures. The banks were failing because they held too many mortgages, and so they're like, man, we don't want any more mortgages, otherwise we don't have liquidity, we're going to go out of business. So the same demand for mortgages doesn't currently exist, and thankfully our production's a little bit lower, so there's not enough to fill, but that's why our rates are high, is because there's a pullback in demand, but it's making it even worse because the Fed is creating more artificial supply. Because every time any of our clients get a mortgage, that goes into a mortgage-backed security and is more natural supply to the market. That's a natural supply chain of this investment into the marketplace for our 401ks and the banks and things to buy. The Fed is creating an absurd, like imagine in our market if suddenly builders found a way to just like snap their fingers and drop 50,000 houses in Salt Lake. Well, home prices would go down, right? Kind of the same concept, but the price of the security is going down, so the yield is going up. The return on it has to go up, which is why rates are going up. So the hope is when they stop doing that, sometime here in Q4, on top of maybe a potential recession, on top of dropping rates, so on and so forth, there's going to be less supply of mortgage-backed securities on the market. So when our clients are doing a mortgage and delivering the more natural supply of mortgage-backed securities, the rates will be lower. So that's a significant thing that is happening now and will help us a lot later in the year.
Mortgage applications, we're at the lowest that we've seen since 1995. Same with existing home sales. What I noticed from this chart is once we've reached this point, the trends upward don't look too bad. A good run here and a great run here.
We've all survived the hardest market since 1995 at least, which is great. Yeah, yeah, round of applause. So hopefully what we experience is this fun ride up, which lots of us experienced the previous one, and I think we're about to see another one. You know, the trend again is kind of rolling over in a relatively distinct manner. So hopefully that comes back.
One thing that we can find, which we think that they've accounted for, but we wanted to see, and we're curious if any of you guys know, is if they accounted for population in either of these. Because if we're at the same number of applications since 95 and we've got a lot more people in the world,
millions and millions more
then
people.
this could be way worse than what we think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we could have experienced something. Yeah, we're on the other side, hopefully.
And we've talked about this a lot, but this is the facts that our clients need to know. Our clients are always so fearful of what's to come. They're like, okay, what are rates going to do? What if we see a bubble? What if the house prices absolutely crash? What's going to happen? Well, they should be fearful of what, if they don't act now, what will happen. This is per Kempsey Gardner, James Wood. We're 31,000 units short at the end of 2022, and by 2024, which we're in right now, 37,000 units short to house everyone.
And that's because of the builders basically stopping their building cycle.
Yep.
They didn't submit for permit. You know, they just halted when all the borrowers halted, all the buyers halted. So it's going to worsen this shortage.
And then that doesn't even account for net immigration. So that's people coming to Utah, either from California or they're coming because of the inland port or all of the infrastructure we have coming to Utah. We've got people flooding in. So the way we calculated that is we got an average of 35,000 people coming in, and we took the average household size of 3.5 people. That would get you 10,000 new households coming into the state. Then you've got household formations, people coming of age, ready to buy their first house. That's another 20,000. Then you factor in rates coming down. So national average, for every 1% the rates come down, that's 1 million people that can, or 5 million, excuse me, that could afford to buy that previously could not, or they're moving up into another tier of house. Well, for Utah's population, that's 50,000 people. I'm curious to know, when rates dropped in December to January, did we feel more busy? Were the phones ringing a little bit more? I know my applications were up.
Way up. Mm-hmm. So that's a sign of that. Proof is there.
And then to Brock's point, we've got building permits are down 20% year over year because builders, they're only human. They're feeling the same fear our clients are feeling and that we're feeling, but it's only adding to this issue. If they're not building homes, it's not gonna solve the issue. The most homes the US has ever built in a year is about 2 million homes. We would need to build 2 million homes for 7 years to even catch up to what we need to be.
I think it's 10% over 2 million.
Oh,
is it 2.2 million homes for 10 years just to make up the shortage? This is national, just to make up the housing shortage in the US.
Yeah, it's crazy. So with all these factored in, you're looking at hundreds of thousands of people that are in a matter of a couple of years, there's just not enough inventory for them. And then what happens is house prices then go up and they're feeling like they're priced out of the market.
So what we try to we talk to basically every client. We talk to them about this, and we try to just strip out the emotion. And it's like, yes, the YouTubers say it's scary. Yes, your parents say you shouldn't, pay $3,200 a month for a townhouse because they pay $1,000 a month for their 5-bedroom house. Yes, we hear all these things. But the fact is, supply and demand is about the most basic economic principle you can ever imagine. And I don't care if you had Snickers bars, and there were 5 of them here, and all of you love Snickers. If I auction them off, I would sell them for more than $1.20 that I pay for them to buy them, right? It's like, it doesn't freaking matter. Home prices will go up. It can't not, unless builders somehow, like I said, can snap their fingers and drop 50,000 units here in Salt Lake County or across the Wasatch Front, which is just not going to happen. Building, frankly, is getting more difficult. So there's some legislation that was recently passed that they will start requiring builders, in order to submit for permit, start requiring builders to provide full-blown construction documents, meaning they've gone through engineering and they have a full set of plans. Not just like, hey, I have this piece of land, here's a quick sketch of how I could lay these houses out. Would you guys approve this? Yeah, I think we'd approve it. Okay, cool. Go to the architect, have them, and then they spend money, right? They have to put all the risk up front before they can even present to the city for approval. Like, building is not getting easier, which means this stuff's gonna just keep getting worse, and home prices will go up.
Utah ranks in the top 10 in population growth, which is absurd. Compared to Colorado, they've got almost double the amount of people we have, but we're right next to them in number of growth.
Yeah, we have the same people, the same number of people, relatively within 100 people move here, and they've got like 40% more population than we have. I mean, you look at like the top numbers, Texas clearly had a lot more than us, but if you look at their population, I mean, okay, they're 10x, so.
And that's where it goes into percentages right here. We're still ranking top 10 in the percentage growth.
Yeah, even better, percentage growth to population. So this it's not slowing down. More and more people are coming here. And then, like, I don't know if you guys heard, I saw this just today, the Millers are gonna be building the ball field. Yeah, and MLB. No, this is down in Salt Lake.
Yeah, just west of Salt Lake.
Yeah, huge, a $3.4 billion revitalization project. Like, all this stuff is going to create demand to live. This is already the coolest state in the entire United States, in my opinion. And we're creating more and more and more demand for it.
And we haven't even felt the effects of like the prison move or in the port, or there's just, exactly.
There's people in Utah that don't even know about that yet.
Exactly.
Let alone the nation. And one crazy thing, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, tell me if I'm way off, or maybe I just have news that you don't have yet, but I heard that the gondola thing, does everybody know the gondola? So I think it's passed, I think it's a done deal. The gondola in Little Cottonwood Canyon, they're putting a gondola to ride you from the bottom of Little Cottonwood Canyon up to Snowbird, up to the top, so that you don't have to ride all the buses and there's not as much traffic going up and down the canyons. The crazy thing is that's like a 30-year project apparently, with phases that I've heard, I don't know if this is pie in the sky or not, but I've heard is gonna start at Thanksgiving Point, take you a gondola to the point in Draper, take you from Draper up to Little Cottonwood Canyon, up Little Cottonwood Canyon, from Little Cottonwood Canyon over to Big Cottonwood Canyon, from Big Cottonwood Canyon over to like Deer Valley and Park City. A full gondola system. If that happens, like, I don't know, every human being will want to live in Utah. That is freaking awesome, right? It's like the coolest, it's ski in, ski out for everyone in the valley. It's like awesome. So there's a lot, yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening. So I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg here. 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, I would always be in business conferences, and I would tell people, oh yeah, hey, I'm Broch. You meet people at business conference, and oh, where are you from? Utah. And they're like, oh, how many wives do you have? That was the joke. Like, Utah was nothing 5 or 7 years ago. Now it's like, oh, Utah, yeah, man, I just came to Deer Valley last year. We go there every year, Like, it's just getting on the map, and it's getting worse. So these things they're meaningful for our clients. And if we can get young people who can still buy a house today, even right here in Salt Lake, Davis, Utah County, all right in the mecca of the best place to live in Utah, they can still buy a home. I mean, it literally could be the only investment they need to make for retirement. It could be generational wealth for them to buy one single house. Could change their entire family's financial life. So I think that's the stuff we need to help our clients understand. Now, this is really cool.
Yeah, so Goldman, when they come out with their predictions, they're historically pretty conservative. For example, last year, we saw their prediction was 6.1% decline for house prices.
Right here, here's the published. They say home prices are going to fall by 6.1% in 2023.
By end of year, we were actually up by around 6%. So that's a 200% difference. To start off this year, they were originally expecting a 1.9% increase, but now they just revised to about a 5% increase.
Yep.
So if they're still being conservative, what does that mean? We could be seeing in the 9, 8, what? Who knows? But
who knows what it is?
Historically,
But who
they're
cares?
being
Say
conservative.
it's 5. On a
We can
$400,000 house, they're
Exactly.
making 20 grand to just live there. Our clients, like, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. For more industry insights, follow us on all platforms at Loans Elevated.
And to get in touch with our team, call or text 801-713-4000 or visit loanselevated.com.